Let's talk all about Persona 5, the first JRPG I have loved in decades. What's up, everybody? It's GhostRobo. Today, we're dishing the goods on Persona 5, a game I have fallen in love with on PlayStation 4. And let it be known right off the bat, I'm not a big JRPG guy. I don't know that I ever was. The last one I liked a lot was you have to go back to Tales of Symphonia, which is action-based, not even really turn-based. Final Fantasy X, I don't even know if I love that game, but fast forward a whole bunch of years, and here we are with Persona 5. I've always wanted to like Persona. It's a great concept. They always get rave reviews, but they never hooked me. I dabbled in them, and it just never quite did it. Persona 5 does it, and hopefully, with an open mind, you can hear me out and maybe find something to like and even love for yourself. Because I think even if you're not a fan of JRPG, even if you've fallen off with JRPGs over the last few years, I think this is a game that could really wow you, really entertain you, and really make you addicted, because that's what it's done for me. And it all begins with the stylized nature. This is the most stylish game I've ever played. It may not be the most beautiful, but it is the most well-designed artistic showpiece. It feels like you're playing an art book, and that is kind of the bait that it sets forth to say, like, hey, come check me out, come try me. I look absolutely freaking gorgeous, and it's in every way. The characters look amazing, the attacks look amazing, the menus look amazing, the transition scenes between areas look amazing, the dungeons look amazing, the school looks amazing, the UI looks amazing. Everything you do, everything that's in the world looks really remarkable, and it has a very It resembles Catherine quite a bit, but a better, prettier version of Catherine. I love Catherine. I love Catherine because I thought the mechanics were really great, and I thought the story was weird in a way that was mysterious and intriguing without being, off-putting. And everything looks beautiful, so if you have eyes, you're going to be interested. And we'll dive more into this later, but right off the bat, just so you're aware, you don't need any previous Persona knowledge, any previous Persona playtime. You can be fresh off the boat to the lands of Persona 5, and they will welcome you with open arms. There are no story ties that you need to be aware of. The gameplay mechanics are all introduced through really excellent tutorials, and you can start here. Totally fine, no previous experience, just the ability to read and eyeballs that are ready to be amazed, because boy, oh boy, are you going to love this show. And yes, Atlus has kind of a backwards policy, an archaic policy in regards to streams and videos, and I don't really like it. I expected it because it's a very Japanese game, a very Japanese company, but as dumb as that is, don't let it deter you from playing Persona 5. Persona 5 has earned its spot as an amazing game regardless of any policy, and just because they're a little backwards with their streaming stuff, don't let that really... I would suggest don't let that impact your ability to enjoy this game. The story is something that also I think will appeal to a much wider range of people than maybe you'd expect. You know, it does a nice job of being inviting and keeping players who are not traditional JRPG enthusiasts intrigued and engaged and not turned off, right? There's not a whole bunch of creepy stuff. There's not a whole bunch of really anime stuff. I mean, there's some there, but it toes the line so well that you want to know what's happening. The characters are interesting. The premise is really interesting. I feel like it's got a pretty adult theme. Right early on, there's some crises that are really intense. And I think that it's appealing to a mature audience and an audience that expects more from their gaming stories than tentacles or save the world or things that you may associate in your head with what JRPGs have been. And Persona has always been a franchise that melds kind of that craziness with more calm reality, because it does have the school aspect, right? Half the game is taking place in your house, in the town, in the school, interacting, talking. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of reading. But I find it to all be snappy and fun. There's a good amount of it that's voice acted, and I like the characters. They do this really great flashback thing, too, and that's what got me hooked. I won't spoil what it is, but right off the bat, there's a flash, I guess it would be a flash forward, and then you flash back to the beginning of the game, and that sort of whoa moment of what is going to eventually happen, what you're going to become, and how it's framed through this kind of investigation, it's really, really interesting. And I found it to be something that instantly hooked me, as opposed to other Persona that I've tried, or other JRPGs where it feels real slow going. I mean, maybe this is the year where Japanese companies start to get it, because Breath of the Wild just bumped you right off the Great Plateau and said, go to work. And Persona 5 seems to get going as well. I've heard some people say they feel it starts slow, and I don't. And I think it's because, for me, the story was very intriguing. And because the systems they introduce are very complex. There's a lot of layered systems here, but they're all explained so well and doled out in such a smart fashion that I never felt overwhelmed. A lot to remember. You got to be on your toes. You got to be really paying attention, but it's rewarding. The dungeons are incredibly intriguing and incredibly cool places to be. It almost doesn't feel like a dungeon, because when I think of traditional JRPG dungeon, I think of something far more plain, far more repetitive, far more boring, and this is structured more like like a heist or like a stealth invasion that happens to also have battles, and everything is, there's no random battles, it's all visible there, and you have you're in control, right? You have an effect on the world, you have an effect on the enemies, you have an effect on how it all goes down, and then once you get in battles, man, it's like a really great system. You get to control all the characters, but there are some nice little assists there that really help you. So once you uncover an enemy's weakness, you can instantly go back and click a button to go straight to what attack will damage their weakness if you want to kind of go through the battles quickly. And you have a slate of characters that all are very cool looking in their actions. They all have their own melee. They all have their own gun. I like that they introduced this gun sort of as a separate attack here. Limited ammunition, but very powerful. And then, of course, the persona attacks, which are basically the magic attacks. And you can swap persona with the main character. Everyone else is assigned a specific persona, basically like a demon or an alter ego that is casting the magic. But your main character is able to switch these, and you're able to do a little bit of Pokemon monster catching, because you can dialogue actually with the demons, the monsters, and recruit them to your side. And it's all done through very cool systems. This is like the hold up system, where if you attack the weakness of every enemy in the battle, that knocks them down, and then if everyone's knocked down, it presents you a chance to hold up, which then you can do an all-out attack and just finish the fight and gain the most XP, or you can talk to them and try and suss some items out of them, some money, or try and recruit them to your side. And by recruiting them to your side, you're acquiring more persona, more abilities thereby, and eventually you can fuse these and make even stronger persona, and kind of work your way up the level ladder that way. Now, this is just one of many systems. You also can craft lockpicks and things to assist in your dungeon delving, and it's all done in a really fun and bright visual style while having a dark story style. And I think that sort of dichotomy, that clash, is really appealing, because it keeps things fast and fresh and kind of in this fun frenzy, but there's a deep-seated mystery lurking that is very intriguing, and wants you and keeps you wanting to progress. You'll be popping back and forth between the dungeons and the real world, and that is also cool, because you have a cell phone. You get text messages. You can choose who you want to hang out with, build rapport with the characters eventually. There'll be love interest, and the whole relationship mechanic is something that I know people will really get into in Persona, and I'm not far enough to have built any of that up yet. I have started to connect with other individuals in the game, but not to a level where we're smooching. So eventually that'll be pretty fun. But early on, even the stuff that would typically be monotonous, going around and going to shops and finding, medicine and weapons and armor, it's really awesome because of the way that the city is structured. It's very cool to look at, and the characters there are interesting. The healing items is just a quick example. This is a minor spoiler, but incredibly minor. It's not story related. At one point, your home is kind of like this cafe. You live in the upstairs of this cafe, and this doctor comes in, and you think she looks weird, so you go in and check out what she's up to, and she's kind of selling black market drugs and things like that, and those are the items that you buy for healing and restoring your magic points in the dungeons. But it's couched in a way that is not just oh, here is the vendor, click on the button. It's couched in a story wrapper and a plot wrapper, and in again a mystery wrapper. There's stuff always tied to these different characters and these different locales that make it interesting. Plus, you just go in the menu and it looks absolutely bonkers, which is great. And I'm really excited to acquire all the different characters, because in the real world, they're high schoolers, and then in the dungeons they basically transformed into these like pseudo superheroes slash thieves slash basically really better or stronger, or what word am I looking for? Kind of like really hyperbolized versions of their best characteristics. Let's put it that way. So they're very accentuated in a way. So like one of your friends is kind of like a troublemaker, so he takes on like this thug persona, or this thug role, I guess, and then is sort of like he has a skull mask. Oh, it's just so freaking cool. And it could on the outside look goofy, but I feel that even while you're in these weirdo dungeons with these weirdo persona and everything is all bright and colorful, again, like I said, there's an interesting story there, and the concept of sort of what's going on in the area around you is really really a great motivator to keep playing. Now, there is a little bit of repetitiveness in the battles, and that's to be expected. I don't think you can avoid that in any JRPG. But there's so many options. Again, the fact that you can use persona magic attacks, the fact that you can swap persona, the fact that you can use regular old melee, the fact that you can use the guns, the fact that you have this mechanic of trying to attack weaknesses where you get an extra attack if you strike an enemy's weakness. And then you eventually will be able to baton pass that attack onto someone else. So say I take down the enemy that's weak to fire. Well, now I'm going to throw it over to one of my other characters who has a lightning spell because the enemy remaining is weak to lightning. So really, like, it all flows and works together so well, very brilliantly executed, and I feel like it is sort of the culmination of years and years of working and massaging these systems out to be something that feels almost perfect. And the structure of the dungeons themselves, just super marvelous. They look exciting. There's a little bit of puzzle solving as you progress through. You're looking to hit these safe rooms because those are your save points and your fast travel points. So the structure of the dungeon is such that you probably won't be able to complete it all in one go. So you have to kind of make progress, go back to the real world, get new items, get new weapons, kind of chill for a little bit, learn more about the story, talk to people, build some bonds, and then go back into the dungeon. But you'll be able to fast travel right back to the last save room. So getting to those save rooms, safe save, however you want to call it, they're both, is really critical. And that sort of, those are your like mission markers or your progress markers that you're gunning for each time you dive in. And I think that I don't know who the ultimate evil is yet, but how it's kind of setting up is I'm hopeful that it's really going to be, there's going to be a big payoff. And they still throughout the story are running this kind of dual timeline thing of the investigation from the initial flash forward and then the current kind of set back a ways timeline. And it's interesting to sort of get hints from that investigation that then are going to play out and have ramifications in your current timeline. It's just, it's really, mystery is something that's not done enough in games, and so I love that they're really, really going heavy on that. And like the flash forward style and kind of that investigatory style is really appealing to me, and I think it will be appealing to a lot of fans of other genres. And I think that, if you're looking like, why would I get this if I don't like JRPGs? Why would I get this if I don't like turn-based? It's really not boring in any way. You are visually entertained and you are mechanically entertained at pretty much every turn, and you're moving your characters, through the dungeon. They can take cover, they can find secrets, they can, there's different like areas where you can climb up and run on top of high platforms and find shortcuts and open up secrets, and there's just a whole lot going on, to the point that I guess I'm kind of like, I don't feel like I'm playing a real JRPG, even though it's like a super hardcore JRPG, because all the systems are so well made and so well integrated with the characters and the world and the storyline that it sort of all blends together as this more plot-driven, cinematic, story-driven adventure than a JRPG. And luckily, at least thus far, all those plot points have been better than like save the princess, save the world, stop calamity, avoid the giant evil king. There's none of that thus far, and so it has. I feel like it earns its hours and hours of dialogue. This is a super long game. It's supposed to be like 80 hours or whatever, and that's a humongous commitment, but they pass by pretty quick because there's a lot to do. You can get part-time jobs, you can read books that are going to build your stats, and just little touches. Like they'll ask you questions in school, and if you get them correct, it boosts some of your stats, and eventually that will assist you in getting better jobs, that will assist you in having better abilities in the battles, it'll assist you in your relationship. Like everything is just kind of integrated all in a very clever way. And I feel like so many games struggle with introducing mechanics and systems. So many games struggle with making things obtuse, making things overcomplicated, making things really hard to remember. You're like diving in menus like, what does this do? What is the point of that? Why am I doing that? Where am I supposed to go? And yet this is laced with mechanics and laced with systems. And they found a way to make them all fun. And I don't know, I feel like because I'm invested in the story and invested in the characters and everything looks so cool, I feel like I have an easier time remembering it all because it's like important to me to really grasp these characters and grasp these systems and grasp this world, as opposed to like, okay, here is your, blah, 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 and it doesn't matter because the characters are boring and they have all similar attacks and you're doing these random battles and you're just trying to get to the next town. It feels like they've cut a lot of the fluff, and there's even more that you can do, right? So if you want to talk to every single person, if you want to go to every single shop, there's batting cages, there's doctor's offices, there's gun shops, all sorts of stuff, and I'm sure I'll continue to unlock areas of the city. And there's really great fast travel. You can move through the different underground like metro stations. You can move to the school. You can go back to your sort of home area. You can go to the shopping district. A whole lot going on. And sometimes the load times are long. That'd be kind of my biggest complaint, is I wish the loads were shorter. But usually they are delivering something pretty along the way. So when you step onto a train, it has this really cool transition where these silhouettes of passengers of a train or a metro, whatever you want to call it, subway, are standing there and kind of milling about, and then they like zoom off the screen when it goes back to gameplay. Or your guy will kind of like in the dungeons jump and pull the black transition down and then jump up and lift it off. So like the transitions are really cool. And if there's going to be long load times, well, they at least did something great with those interstitials to make them appealing and make them interesting. And I don't feel like anything is super annoying or super cumbersome, and I feel like they struck a really great balance with the initial lineup of characters. Eventually, you'll add more party members, and who knows how they are. But your initial quartet, who I have currently, I think they all have really cool personalities, and all are different enough and nuanced enough to feel fleshed out. There's actually some moments that feel so much like Catherine, and I think that plays a part in my love for it, because I loved Catherine, even though that story got kind of crazy and weird. The puzzle mechanic was beyond awesome, and I loved how much brain power that required. And then the story, and that game was very contained, right? You were always in this bar, and not a whole lot of movement, not a whole lot of variety. Well, if you like that, Persona 5 gives you so many places to go and so much to do. And it doesn't have the same puzzle-solving mechanic. It doesn't have the same tower building and climbing mechanic that I thought was so original and exciting in Catherine. But it does have all these other systems that really fuse together to form something probably just as fun. The battles, once you get a hang of it, the battles you can go through pretty quickly. And for better or worse, the more you understand them, the more repetitive they feel. But again, I'm early, so the more I progress, the harder it's getting, the more types of enemies I'm encountering, and eventually the more characters and moves and abilities and all that I'll have to choose from. But it really, I think it gets off the ground running if you can get through the dialogue. And, the only people I don't think the game is for is if you're not someone who really wants to deal with a lot of reading, if you don't want to deal with a very in-depth story, if you don't want to deal with a lot of dialogue. I don't know that anything is going to overcome it. I'd still say look at it, right? You're watching gameplay now. See if the style and the appeal of sort of these awesome systems and making everything look freaking like an art book and like some awesome anime is appealing to you. But there is like a crap ton of dialogue. And so I know I showed my brother and he thought it was boring just because there was so many words and letters to get through between the gameplay segments. And you do have a little bit of control over that. Like I said, you pop in and out of the dungeon at your own choosing. Sometimes it's forced, obviously, story points, but you can kind of plan out and live your life. And it is a little bit of a life simulator as well. And I think I'm intrigued by that aspect, where you do eventually have the relationship building, where you do have, kind of living the life of this Japanese transfer student who's shy and uncovering this whole mysterious mess in this other world and unlocking hidden potential and all this sort of stuff. Like a really, really cool, again, like difference there between and living that out and feeling that and kind of maybe putting some of yourself in that situation has been really cool for me. So I freaking love Persona 5. There is probably a whole lot more detail and nuance that I could go into, and I'm sure series regulars and big fans notice even more than I possibly could. But sort of from a newcomer's perspective, I hope I gave you a reason to get into it, reason to give it a chance. It really is a top-tier, super well-made game. There is nothing that would limit you if you haven't played any of the previous titles. You don't need to be a Persona buff. You don't need to have played 4. You don't need to know the characters. You don't need to know the plot. None of that is going to matter. So you can jump in straight away. And I think this is one of the most expertly crafted games I've played in a long time. The Metacritic shows that it's at 94. Zelda Breath of the Wild is the only thing higher in a long time. So I think it's well-deserved. I can't wait to play more. I'll be interested to see for myself, do I burn out around like 30, 40 hours? Or am I able to really progress? And I think a lot of that's going to depend on how much of a bond I form emotionally or mentally with these characters, how much I like them, and how much I like where the story goes. 'Cause I'm still in the very early stages. It's very promising right now. But, there's times where promising stories kind of go in directions that aren't very interesting, and I'm hopeful that this one can keep the intrigue and dole out reveals, dole out secrets, dole out aha moments without tarnishing its mysterious nature. And I like that they've set up these two dueling sort of timelines where one, everything is done, and one, everything is just beginning, and how they kind of can leak into each other and help each other. And it's not different timelines like time travel. Don't believe that or anything. But just the fact that you are learning some stuff about the current from the flash forward and kind of vice versa. And they help like insinuate what may happen in the future. And I do wonder if the game is going to go beyond the flash forward. I kind of think it may. So that'll be really cool to see. But anyways, I could talk about this game forever. And instead, I'm going to go play it. And maybe you guys should as well. So let me know what you think about Persona 5 in the comments down below. And until next time, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I love ya. Let me know if you liked the video. And we will see you all later.